Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Dave Thompson. Thanks for being on the show, Dave.
Hey, Whitney. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Dave's primary focus is educating and helping investors grow their passive income. His company has provided their investors with 21 investment deals since the spring of 2016. He's invested in over 5,000 apartment units and hundreds of self-storage and mobile home park units. Dave, thanks again for being on the show. It was a pleasure to meet you recently in Dallas when we were touring a property together. And why don't you give our listeners a little more about your background and how you got into this business called syndication?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Whitney, it was nice to meet you for the first time, and we talked about a year ago or so. And it is kind of a small world, it seems, that we play in. A lot of things going on, but folks are seem to be focused in areas that we're treading in, and we seem to see the same faces and names, which is nice. Recently, so it's about 2015, I was left corporate America, did about 20 years high-tech management, land down here in Austin, and it was like we started buying some rental properties. My wife and I did spend a lot of time on Bigger Pockets, and we were just trying to figure out what the best thing to do here was. And I had a really good friend of ours that she had bought like 20 houses in the area. She was a realtor. She was smashing it up. She had a mobile home park. She had all these things going on. And she kept saying, hey, you got to jump in here. And that was 2012, which happened to be, in retrospect, a really good opportunity. So we got a handful of single family rental properties, but I was really itching to leave the corporate world and the W-2 behind. And the kids were getting a little bit older. I had a daughter in college and one in high school, and they were getting pretty independent. So I told my wife, I said, I think it's a good time to try something different. I think she was very supportive, but a little bit surprised, But I went ahead and went out and joined a program to teach me a little bit more about multifamily apartments, and that was the one I'd read about. And the approach was to work with this mentor for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then with some of your friends go buy a small apartment and start down that path. But for me, it was I was a little bit impatient. I think after 3 months into it, I was like, it's a lot more challenging than I thought. It's a big boy and girls game, and definitely a team sport. And trying to do this on my own, or and raise capital, find a deal in a competitive market. I kind of at some point just went back to the mentor and said, how can I help you? How can I help you? I really didn't need cash right away. I was just like, I just want to learn. That resulted in getting an opportunity, helping him on with an $8 million raise on a big deal in Dallas, Texas, a 320 unit apartment. So that was my first foray into the commercial real estate space where I am today. And with that opportunity, I had a successful raise experience. And then he said, well, hey, great job. Here's another one. So we just kept working in that. And I learned a lot about, due diligence and working with them and, vetting the properties and making sure this made sense. But he also told me a cool thing. He said, those investors that you bring in are your investors. You cultivate them, you develop the relationship, you maintain contact with them, answer questions throughout the life of this deal. So I was like, wow, I'm kind of marrying my investors. But I realized that's a platform for me, right? To grow this investor base and offer them more opportunities. Fast forward to today, I'm still working with that same operator in apartments, but I've also branched out to a couple other niches. Self-storage and manufactured home parks. Those 3 areas have done some research, have a really good track record, and a lot of good tailwinds behind it, and good future opportunities, it looks like. So we've got our investors, as investors have grown, wanting to diversify, geographically and some other niches. And so we're helping them build a portfolio of, I would say, non-traditional assets. And they're attracted to the cash flow, they're attracted to the passive a part of it because they're busy. They have their families and their businesses and their jobs, and they want to participate, but they need some help, right? What is this all about? So, really our business right now is educating investors on the opportunities that are out there, teaming and partnering with really good operators who've got good experience in these particular niches and geographies. And then we work side by side with the operator as part of the general partnership team. We vet the deals with them, and we invest in the same deals So we're aligned with our investors, and yeah, it's been phenomenal. I really enjoy it. Had a lot of fun at it. I've learned a lot, and I try to share my experiences with people who are trying to get into the business. What's an approach, what's a path. But it's a phenomenal business, and I would encourage you, if you're not 100% sure, investigate it, and we can talk about maybe some of the ways to get involved later in the show.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. And anybody that's on Bigger Pockets have probably seen Dave on there, and I think that's where he and I first had met, a long time ago now. But Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you do coach somebody to get started in this business? Let's go ahead and talk about that, because I know so many people ask you, right? They've seen your success and they're like, Dave, what do I do? Right? How do I get started in this? And then we'll go into how that's structured and what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it does start with passion. So if you have a flighting interest, I don't think it's you want to keep talking to people till that candle burns bright, because it's a hard work, but it's very rewarding. And if you're doing something you love, then it doesn't really feel like work. I'm probably working. I mean, I work pretty strong and a lot of hours in the corporate world, but I mean, I feel like I'm never even working a day now doing what I'm doing. But yeah, I get that question a lot. I'm out there quite a bit in thought leadership platforms. Bigger Pockets Forum's a good example of blogging. But people come to the website, and not all of them are investors. Some of them are, tried their hand at real estate, maybe bought a single-family rental property or flipped the house, but they want to get in the big game. And so I think the number one thing, Whitney, I've learned is, my experience was partnering with an expert. I see a lot of people either trying to do it on their own or teaming up with a friend of theirs that doesn't have any more experience than they do. And then, they have a comfort relationship there, but they're not really adding value to each other. They're not, this person, when I went out to look for an operator, I look at operators that, hey, they're really good at finding deals and managing deals and everything else, but they probably need a little bit of help in an area where I felt I was getting stronger. That's developing relationships, educating investors, and bringing them to their deal. So bringing capital to the deal. I had no idea when I started down that path that I would be any good at it. In fact, when I left college, I had a degree in financial planning, and I tried to start my own. Well, I didn't realize I'd have to really pursue an entrepreneurial path. It's not like you just go out and get a job. Maybe with a little more research, that would have made sense. But after 6 months working for an insurance company, selling whole life insurance and disability as my only avenue in this business, I was like, that's not what I signed up for, was interested in. I like the investment side, and certainly that has a purpose in overall financial planning, but that wasn't where I was excited about, right? So I took that failure throughout my 20-year career in high tech and never pursued sales and marketing roles. And that was unfortunate, because maybe I would have done well. And today I'm doing what people would say is a sales and marketing role, but I have a whole different approach. And if you tell me I'm doing that, I'm doing it wrong, because what I'm all about is educating investors. And then if they like a deal and they qualify, then we just show them the way mechanically to get in the deal and how we're going to take care of them in the deal. We're going to communicate with you. And it's just an educational path. And it really works magic, because at the end of the day, when you're talking to people about apartments or mobile home parks or self-storage, most people have never done it before. They're looking for you. You're all of a sudden an expert. And so you can kind of relax, because you have done some study. You have answered a bunch of questions from investors. So you've gotten pretty good. You've been really close to the operator about how these things work. So I would think, if back to your original question, if I could figure out the fastest way to get anywhere is find some area that really kind of gets you excited about, and really research some of the best players in there and try to offer up any kind of service to them at really no charge. I didn't really have I would have done it for free. Now, once I realized there was a nice income component to it, it probably fanned my flames even faster. But, it started out a curiosity, a passion, and realizing that I can't do this by myself. And why swim upstream? Let's just go partner with some experts. And that's really I have probably 4 or 5 foundational things when people ask me why I'm successful at raising capital. That's the first one. It's really just partner with experts. You automatically will probably have a pretty good market and a pretty good deal. I don't have to go find that. I have to understand it. Does it make sense with my reasoning? I vet it, look at the underwriting. Yeah, it makes sense. So I go to the property. And so once I feel comfortable with something, then I can really talk to investors at the most sophisticated level to, people who are really new to it. So, yeah, I think we beat that one up, but I think that would be the first thing I would do.
So I know you're helping, you help lots of people raising capital, or you're coaching people. Tell us some common mistakes people make when they're getting started raising capital. Maybe some things that I need to know if I'm just getting started doing that.
Well, I think you first have to know is, you attract people when you're raising capital. You don't go cold call people and get out on the social media. We have regulations about even posting our deals out there. And so it's almost kind of like, you got to create something that attracts people. And one of the things I learned earlier was a concept of thought leadership. I mean, certainly, Whitney, this is what you're doing. You're providing a forum for people to come together and learn. It's not an intimidating environment. You're not selling anything. And so that's what thought leadership's about. I did it through blogging. And I'll at least blog once a month. Maybe I should do it more, but that's my business is keeping me pretty busy. So you gotta be consistent with it, whatever you do. But I think blogging was a good way for me. Getting into apartment forums, Bigger Pockets, you mentioned, was a real estate place that, listen, I'm answering questions. I'm part of a syndication team. I love turning around and answering questions at Bigger Pockets. Hey, this is what I've learned, and then I'd use my blogs. I would link people to, hey, go read a blog. I've got 50 of these now. I probably talked about it or learned something about it. Go read this one. Here's 5 steps on the key essentials for raising capital. Here's why I like mobile home parks. Here's the 5 top things. So that became a way for people to come to my website. And when they came to my website, they'd fill out pieces of information for them. I'd get them usually on my newsletter at that point. So then they're starting to get some relationship with it. They say, hey, Dave, he looks like he knows what he's talking about. He's got all these blogs, he's on podcasts, but it's only been like 3 years. It hasn't, it's not like a lifetime of this stuff. It's just, I got excited. I got with the right people who are experts. I wanted to turn around and share that with people through some kind of thought leadership platform. And certainly what you're doing, Whitney, is a fantastic method. And there's a variety of the things that you can do. But anyway, that would be one tip I would say. Like, once you're with experts or partnering, find out a way to share information for free that's logical, makes sense. I mean, I wasn't a writer. I didn't know what blogging was. I had to go buy a book on blogging. I read it and it didn't really tell me much. I just started writing stuff, And I'm like, for blogging for me was maybe creative. It was all about length. I tend to be kind of wordy, so my big thing was just trying to keep it kind of tight. But I watched a lot of people on Bigger Pockets, and everybody put like 3 steps to this or 5 steps to that. So that's how I started. I was like, that kind of keeps it succinct, and just some of the things I learned. But yeah, I think that would be a wise thing to think about is you don't have to be, and the other thing is, don't be a sales and marketing person if you're a capital raiser. I learned that right off the bat. I was like, man, if I feel like I'm talking to someone and trying to hammer this message home, I'm doing the wrong thing. It's just sit back and listen. And most of the information we're providing is pretty logical. Let them read it, let them look at it, ask them questions. And all we're really doing is answering questions. Just answering questions. And if you answer questions thoughtfully and carefully, and even if you don't know something, it's okay. Hey, I'll get back with the operator, especially if that's something technical. It's okay as long as you get back and with a quality response and reasonable time. And it just depressurizes the situation. Some people freak out when they have to ask for money. I'm just like, I lay it out there. If you're interested, well, great. Let's just show you how to do it and how we're going to, monitor this thing for you. And it's not a transactional deal. We really are into long-term relationships, long-term partners, and getting to know how this process works and explain it to people in a logical way that makes sense to them, right?
Great. You had mentioned educating investors. As a capital raiser, help me or help the listener, to better educate our investors.
Yeah, I mean, so if someone's new, we're working in 3 spaces: multifamily, apartments, self-storage, and manufactured home parks. A lot of people I'm talking to, it's their first time in syndication. What is all that all about? I've heard that kind of word. Apartments, yeah, I've been doing a few investments on my own, but I've heard about syndication, or I've heard about apartments. I like to keep people. We did 13 deals this year. 9 of them are multifamily, and for a reason. It's because I feel, and you would probably agree to this, we all probably lived in some type of apartment, dormitory, something when we were growing up outside of our family unit that gave us some exposure to that business model. We had to pay somebody rent. They took care of something in our, just kind of that experience, understand there's a business model here. People just aren't creating apartments and dorms for the heck of it. They're the business behind it. And so when I talk about self-storage, mobile home parks, it's a little bit bigger stretch for people. Most people never lived in a self-storage unit. Most people have never lived in a manufactured home park. So apartments is a little bit easier. So I start people with something that I think they can relate to. And then I tell people, like in apartments, you know, everybody has seen these flipping house shows, right? On TV, and it looks cool, and it's not as easy as it looks. If you talk to people who are in the business, not all make a profit. But when you look at apartments, it's very similar to what we're doing. It takes longer. You know, maybe take 2 to 5 years, depending on the economy, what's going on, if we have a soft market, but maybe at least 2 years to renovate these things. We're not going to renovate when people are living there, so we have to wait for the lease to expire. You know, and so that's like a flip of a pancake. And so people say, okay, I can understand how you create value. You know, so we have kind of a high level how we create value. You know, we're increasing income in the property. I've learned early on that if you keep things simple for people and frame it, they always want to know about the risks, you know, and we certainly want to talk to them reasonably about that. But I have some good examples. You know, in 2009, this is a good example. In 2009, the delinquency rate on mortgages for multifamily was less than 0.5% nationwide. That means 1 out of 200 apartment owners, good, bad, ugly, good markets, bad markets, only, you know, 1 in 200 couldn't pay their mortgage. Single family homes was 4.5%. So people always tell me, ooh, you know, apartments, it's kind of scary. I don't know what. I'm like, listen, you're probably 10 times safer in an apartment, owning an apartment, than you are in your own house, you know, because if you lose your job, you know, it's easy. That's one income and one big mortgage. And, you know, when you have 300 unit apartments, we can weather the storm and have some vacancies and still do okay. So I find things that people can relate to. I have a few charts I can send people, but I always want to make sure we talk about the risk, because usually it's their first investment into this thing. And I usually will, like, the blogs are a great source for me. I have a 25 facts on what syndication is all about. So I'll just link it into my email with them. Go look at this, go read that. So it saves me a lot of time. They can read it on their own time. And they see that I've got content, you know, I'm just not giving them a call, you know. So that's kind of an approach I like to take, you know.
Could you give us a couple, maybe the risk type questions that are common, or maybe that we need to be prepared to be able to answer when an investor is asking about, well, what are the risks? You know, are there specific things that they're commonly asking that, you know, we need to make sure we're on top of?
Yeah, I mean, the common things investors ask is, you know, when am I going to get my money back? You know, we talk a lot about the returns, right? You know, this 8% preferred return is the cash flow you're going to get during this life of this hold, and at the end, when we sell this opportunity, here's the profit. So there's you know, it's kind of a total return concept. So you get some cash along the way, which is not like stocks, and so you know, you don't have this big volatility thing going on. But I always start there. You know, you're a limited liability partner in these syndications. You're not on the loan. You're not going to be sued. You know, it's a general partner who's on the hook for all that. So you have some protections as a limited liability partner. You do have to know, though, that your complete investment in the deal is at risk. If you invest $50,000, that's at risk, and you know, we'll have a private placement memorandum that comes after you decide, hey, you know, I want to reserve a spot and move forward, and that's a hefty 100 and something page legal document, and page 1 or page 2, it's going to be right at the front. It says, you know, involves a high degree of risk, but and then there's 6 pages of risk. I mean, there's 6 pages of risk, and you know, I love kind of talking to doctors about this, because, you know, we've all seen, or even just watching TV, you see the news of the new drug comes out, and there's, you know, you listen to that commercial, like you never would want to take it. I mean, they go through all of the risks, you know, at the very end. You're like, would I ever want to take it? But you ask the doctor, says, well, if you have that condition, it's probably a pretty reasonable drug. The FDA's approved it. We're recommending it. So there is no risk-free, you know, there's no risk-free out there, right? So people have to understand, if you're looking at types of deals like this, where you know, maybe an 8% cash on cash, and you know, maybe a 15-18% return on your money, those pretty healthy returns. It's going to come with some risk, right? Historically speaking, it's probably one of the best risk-adjusted investments out there when you take into consideration other things you can be investing in. It doesn't have as much volatility, but you know, basically when it's an apartment, the risk is you can't pay the mortgage. The operations of the business is not strong enough to support paying the debt on the property. But you really want to, you know, we tell investors we're dealing with experienced operators. They have adequate capital reserves. We have a business plan that's going to increase the income of the property, which is what these are all valued on, and should over time cover that debt even better, right? The debt service coverage ratio, we call it. But so we don't want to gloss over it, but I also pre-wire people before they get the PPM. If I know they're new to syndication, I'm going to give them 5 minutes. Hey, have you ever seen a PPM before? Well, what is that? Okay, let me show you. So I talk about 5 sections. Here's going to be the offering. There's going to be some risks. There's going to be a partnership agreement that you don't have much voting rights. I just tell them, you're not going to have much voting rights, because those are the questions I get. Like, I don't have any voting rights. Like, there's a purpose for that. You're a limited liability partner. If you have voting rights, you can probably get sued, right? Because you'd be looked at as a manager. So, I have a couple things about it. The fees are in there. I explain the fees. Listen, your returns are net fees, but I do have to let you know that you'll see some fees in there. If I don't talk about fees and you see fees, you're kind of probably asking those questions and maybe think I'm hiding something. So I want to get everything that I think they might ask out front. It's 2% acquisition fee, it's a 2% asset management fee. This is industry standard, and this is how it applies to the investment. And then we have the subscription agreement you're going to sign, and make sure you have your bank checkbook for the ACH to fill out. So in a 5-minute conversation, I can tell them that you're going to see 6 pages of risk, but I'm going to tell you that the lender does underwriting like we do. They're not going to give us $30 million on a loan unless they've done their homework too, right? They want to make money, but at the same time, they're supposed to be doing good, solid loans. They have their own criteria, right? We're going to do a property condition report. We're going to have an engineer come in there and look at the property, because most of our properties we buy 1980s and 2005, good bones, but they are getting older. Whole 100-something page property inspection report. You can have access to that when it's ready. I mean, we're not going to do the deal with all sorts of structural issues, and we're not, the seller's not going to pay for them, or their high risk situation. So I just take people through like a 5-minute on that thing, so that they just don't get this thing in their email box. Because I'm going to tell you, Whitney, the first time, this is not even before I was in this business. When I left the company, left the corporate world, I had a 401k, and I moved it into an IRA, and I even had a financial planning degree, but I started talking to some financial planners, because I'm like, it's been 20 years before, when I got out of college. Things may have changed. I don't know a lot about the taxes. I'm not keeping up with all this stuff. So it was nice to do that. But one of the first things they recommended to me was a private real estate syndication. It's one of my 3 things that they recommended to move some money into. And I remember taking that thing home, and I was like, this is before I knew about syndication, and it freaked me out. I just like, there's just so much. There's 20 pages of why I shouldn't do this investment. And now, it was probably a pretty good research, the track record of the operator, and understood what these documents are supposed to do. They're supposed to protect you, and a good lawyer is going to put everything in there that could possibly go wrong. Hey, there could be a hurricane up in Dallas, Texas. Well, I know I lived in Austin. We had a big Hurricane Harvey in Houston, and we got a little bit of rain up here in Austin. And Dallas is even further north. So you can't insure for everything. We're going to insure for the right things, right? Does that make sense?
Sure. So, could you give us a couple pointers on finding investors? I know you said, you want to attract them. So maybe a better question is, tell us that, other than blogging, what's the best way to attract investors other than like the local RIA? A lot of people say, oh, go to your local RIA. Well, a lot of times the local RIA are the guys who are looking at single family homes or flipping, and that's, what's the best way to attract those investors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have an answer for that. So, in the beginning, I think you take a shotgun approach. You try a lot of different things, and keep your mind open, because where I thought I was going to be strong is I had just left corporate America, right? What's my peer group? All those people in high tech with pretty good paying jobs, and I'm like, but they look at you like, hey, yesterday you were in that cube, today you're a real estate mogul. Bridge that gap for me. So I'm like, okay, that group now is a pretty good group for me, right? But at the time, my peer group was like, okay, get out there. I could just sense, get out there a little bit, prove you're successful before you come back. So that was kind of an interesting surprise for me. It was not a good channel. The other thing you mentioned was local multifamily meetup groups. I have some investors from that group, but I was spending a lot of time driving 30 minutes, going through an hour session, 30 minutes back, having lunch. And I was like, once a week, and I was like, I'm not really sure if I'm really spending my time wisely. I was getting some investors. In the beginning, you want to get investors from everywhere. You're just like, you need investors, right? But over time, I really rarely go to those anymore. I'm going to go one this week for the first time in like a year, because someone invited me to speak over there. But I was like, I haven't been in a long time, because I was like, I found most of them are active, and great people, but I just didn't see that was a place for my passive investors. What ended up being big for me in the beginning was, we mentioned bigger pockets. So I was on there blogging and on forums a lot. So I really spent a lot of time consciously, like, hey, block out, 20 minutes, 30 minutes every day, get out there and just provide information. So I really focused on that. And then my wife's network was surprisingly very strong. And so we went that route. I didn't think that was going to be a strong network at first, but that ended up being a pretty strong network. So what I found out, there was a book that was on my shelf and it really resonated with me. It was called String Finders 2.0. And when I was growing up, Whitney, I don't know about you, but there was this thing going on that, you know, I always heard this. I don't know if it's from my parents or not. I love my parents, but I was hearing it from somewhere. It was like basically like, what's your strength and what's your weaknesses, and shore up your weaknesses. It wasn't like take your strengths and blow them up. Like, you know, if you have a glaring weakness, okay, I get it. You know, maybe you want to correct on that, but don't spend a ton of time on your weaker points. So what I was doing, I was going to the multifamily managed groups. I was trying to work my Delaware network, my high-tech network, and I was like spinning my wheels. And then I started seeing these two other channels start going. I'm like, okay, I'm doubling down. I'm going to spend more time in that channel and more time in this channel over here. And my wife and I would host dinners, and we just get out there and do different things. What ends up happening in the beginning, it's just like they always talk about the snowball, especially with the capital raising. It's like what happens now is like, you know, I'll have 50, 75 investors in a deal, and I would say 80% of those people, 85% are return investors. And referrals, that's not anything when you start out. But if you stay in this game long enough, I mean, with 21 deals later, it's a huge business, part of the business. I get referrals. Most of my business, I think, is coming from referrals. Investors, hey, you know, I want to diversify my portfolio. That's why I didn't just stay with this operator and just stay with that niche, because I wanted to, you know, I didn't want to all be in this city with tons of apartments. And I'm like, well, like that's good for maybe a few investors, but over time they're going to want to diversify. So that became more of a bigger approach. But yeah, I mean, I think you try a lot of different things. Don't spend a lot of time on things that aren't working. Things that are working, double down and just blow those up until they're sustaining, and then maybe go back and look at those other paths again and say, there's a reason why I left. Is okay, now the technology space, I get a lot of investors from technology, a lot of from Silicon Valley, California, looking for total return deals in Texas, right? So yeah, I mean, just start and see what works, and continue to grow that muscle wherever you're strongest. Yeah.
Dave, you know, as far as, you know, raising capital, what's been the hardest part of that part of the business for you?
Let's see. In the beginning, it's finding investors, right? So that's pretty natural. But that actually, you know, it was like 13 investors on my first deal to do $1 million, and then it was like 26, and it's so you know, it's just that was the first time. Let me think about this. The difficult part of it. You know, even today, I don't think I'm stressed about it, but until you actually get all the money in, you're always, you know, you always need, what I always tell myself is, and it gets better over time, because again, most of my investors, if they're return investors and referrals, they'll tend to, if they tell you they're going to do it, they'll do it most of the time. I'm pretty confident that they're just going to finish the PPM and send the money in. It's the new investors I don't have that experience with. I'm not really sure what's going to happen. So one thing I always want to make sure, if I have to raise $1 million, I should be looking to have at least 1.3 million and kind of like reserve, like backup. What you really don't want to do is work really hard. Just that's my target. I need to raise $500,000. That's my target. You get there, you're going to be disappointed. Something's going to happen. And oftentimes the people you least expected to happen, like least expected it. But life events happen. It's not that your deal's not good. The deals are good. Sometimes people have little variances about the deal. What I found is people have life events. Hey, I lost my, looks like my job might be in jeopardy. Hey, looks like I'm going to move. Anything that, the top 4 things, people's health, finances, family, if anything is stressing anybody, the last thing they want really to do is make a big financial decision with you. And they're nice about it. They're just like, yeah, maybe it's not a good time, but sometimes they don't communicate that to the last minute. So you're like, oh. So I always coach people who are talking to me about capital raises, like that would be my top 5 things. We already talked about finding a partner that, it's really strong. But one of them is I would say always raise 25% more than you need. And mine's probably down to make 10% now because I'm relying on a more stable base. But, it's I just had a raise last week, and I thought we had plenty of capital. I think we were raising $5.6 million, and we had $1 million over. Okay, so we had $6.6 million. out there. And I'm like, okay, I can kind of put it on cruise control. Well, some of those investors were, $250,000 investors that, I was working with a few folks, and that didn't come through. And all of a sudden that million evaporated pretty quickly. So I had to go back and, shake the trees a little bit for a few people that I thought, might have missed the deal. So I guess that's the most stressful thing. Until that money's all the way in there, don't coast. You stay vigilant. Work with the operator, make sure things are coming in, and close that. That's from a capital raise standpoint. It's like, just have an extra buffer. The weirdest things happen, and at least expect it. But if you know that going in, then you feel a lot more comfortable if you have a few drop-offs.
Sure.
It happens. It's nothing that you did. There's nothing wrong with the deal. It's just life happens to people, and so you just respect that. The other thing, you don't want to get mad at people. Don't get mad. Just totally understand that. And in fact, it works in my favor, I think, if you just say, listen, I don't want you doing this investment. If you feel like release, I'm just talking to a lady today. She sent me an email on a deal that it's coming up, and she says, it's my job's really stressful, and the holidays are coming up. I said, great, no problem. Probably have something happen in January, February. You focus on that. You have a good holiday where, maybe if someone a different approach would be like hammering her, like, 2 or 3 meals. Hey, this is like right up your alley. I don't do that. I have a really subtle approach. And I think that served me well long term. Look at this business long term. And these relationships, if they're not going to do investment today, maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe it's going to be better tomorrow. But if you tick somebody off, you'll never have them again. And it's hard to recover those kind of things. Yeah.
So what's a way that you've recently improved your business that we can all apply to ours?
So one thing I think you can focus on is your customer experience. And one thing I learned a lot in the corporate world, we've hammered it. It's always hammering it to you. What's the customer experience? That could be an internal customer, the group over across the hallway that you're dealing with, not just the outside customer. I want to make my business easy. I want people to, it's easy to work with David Thompson. That's what I want. It's easy to work with him. He's knowledgeable. He shares deals with me. He educates me. He knows my situation, and he never pushes me. It's just when I'm ready, and then he helps me get in. Where I found out is I was getting all these deals, and this started last summer. People would say, "Hey, Dave, I did 3 or 4 deals with you over the last 12 months, which is a lot of deals." And I'm not so sure when my distribution is and all this kind of stuff. So I went out and I got an investor portal. So now on my website, I have an investor portal. So I went back to all of the operators, and it was I thought it was going to be a headache. It ended up not being too bad. And we got all the old deals in there, so they know now what their initial investment was, the date of that, their distributions, and we're working on putting their latest reports in there. So we do push out reports to them, monthly or quarterly updates. But now we have it kind of this place. And I did it for organizational, but then I started realizing it's a great marketing tool, right? Because now I'm like, people like to be organized, especially at the end of the year with tax time. It's a great time to be talking about organization. I got an email from a guy who says, he's an investor. He's invested in 4 deals. He didn't even know I had the portal. So I'm like, wait a second, I got to do a better job marketing my portal. But I felt that that's a great kind of a Venus in a flytrap approach, right? Because there's a lot of investments out there. But if I can provide enough opportunities in 3 niches I think are really solid, have great futures with really strong operators, I think people are going to want to come back to me, because maybe one of my customer experiences is I can provide this one-stop shop portal for you to look at, right? That wasn't my initial idea, was to market it. It was just more like keeping my investors organized. So at the heart of it, and I think this is what's important to any business, is you could be successful, but you have to kind of continue to look internally to say, how do people perceive me, and am I easy to do business with? Right? So the portal was a great thing that came out this fall for us, and I'm really excited about it. And next year we'll have some other things we need to do. Tools, systems, processes. We're always trying to improve what we're doing. But I think the customer experience was a good focus for us. Yeah.
Can I ask what type of portal you're using, or what the maker is?
Yeah, it's called Investor Deal Room, IDR. It started by a gentleman, and he's in Dallas, Texas. And he's partnering with one of the partners I work with in Mobile Home Parks, who's a sponsor up in Dallas, and they kind of bought into that company, and that company was using them, and I'm like, wow, I'm already using you, and I like how this whole thing is working for your portal. So I'm like, well, if we do deals with you, and you're my back office for the deals that I sponsor, which they are now, then why don't I just use that portal too? And so 3 of the 5 operators I'm working with are using the IDR portal. And so for us, it's great because, pretty soon we're going to be able to sync. So when one of my operators uploads their investments, it syncs with mine. And it's really close to doing that. And that was the purpose for starting with them. Yeah.
Great. Well, Dave, unfortunately, we're out of time. You've been a great guest, and I really appreciate you being on the show and providing all the content. Would you tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you?
Sure. Yeah. ThompsonInvesting.com is the website. My personal email is david@thompsoninvesting.com, THOMPSON. Love to hear from you if I can provide any value to you. I've got, like I said, some blogs out there. I have a downloadable book free on raising capital. And I'm writing another book coming out in the spring, which will be Niches and the Riches, which is really all about investor focused about the three areas that we like, and most of that's blog content, organized. But anyway, Whitney, I really appreciate the time. Thanks so much. I hope we shared some value today to your listeners, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, and I highly recommend David's free book. I read it probably a year ago or less, and I highly recommend it. I took a lot of things from it, and I still remember it now. But I hope the listeners will go to the Facebook group and join so we can all learn from people like Dave and connect with other people in the industry and grow our business together. I hope you'll go to lifebridgecapital.com so you can connect with me and schedule a call, and look forward to connecting soon. And we'll talk to the listeners tomorrow.
Thanks, Whitney.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.